Alright. Let's do a recap real quick, everybody. Yo, 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 yo. It's your boy Epic Smasher, and currently we are reading A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm super excited. We are on chapter 6. It is absolutely amazing. So let's go ahead and jump in. Here we go. So much color, so much sunlight and movement and texture. I could hardly drink it fast enough. To paint it would be useless, would never do it justice. My awe might be subdued, my fear had the place not been so wholly empty and silent. Even the garden through which we walked, following a gravel path to the main doors of the house, seemed hushed and sleeping. Above the array of amethyst, irises, and pale snowdrops and butter-yellow daffodils, swaying in the balmy breeze, the faint stench of metal tickled my nostrils. Of course, it would be magic, because it was spring here. What wretched power did they possess to make their land so different from ours? To control the seasons and weather as if they owned them? Sweet sweat trickled down my spine as my layers of clothes turned suffocating. I rotated my wrist and shifted in the saddle. Whatever bonds had held me were gone. The fairy meandered on ahead, leaping nimbly up the grand marble staircase that led to a giant oak doors in one mighty fluid movement. The doors swung open for him on silent hinges, and he prowled inside. He'd planned this entire arrival, no doubt, keeping me unconscious. So I didn't know where I was, didn't know the way home, or what other deadly fairy territories might be lurking behind me, between me and the wall. I felt for my knife, but found only layers of frayed clothes. The thought of those claws pawing through my cloak to find the knife made my mouth so go dry. I shoved away the furry in terror and disgust as my horse came to a stop, and her own accord at the foot of my stairs. I think I would. All right. Oh, this should probably be right there. Yeah, actually, that's perfect. I shoved away the fury in terror and disgust as my horse came to a stop of her own accord at the foot of the stairs. The message was clear enough. The towering house seemed to be watching, waiting. I glanced over my shoulder toward the still open gates. If I were to bolt, it would have to be now. South. All I had to do was go south, and I would eventually make it to the wall. If I didn't encounter anything before then, I tugged on the reins, but the mare remained stationary. Even as I dug my heels into her sides, I let out a low, sharp hiss. Fine, on foot. My knees buckled as I hit the ground, bits of light flashing in my vision. I grasped the saddle as I winced as Soreness and hunger raged through my senses, racked my senses. Now, I had to go. Now, I made to move. But the world was still spinning and flashing. Only a fool would run with no food, no strength. I wouldn't get half a mile like this. I wouldn't get half a mile before he caught me and tore me to ribbons as he promised. I took a long, shuddering breath. Food. Getting food, then running. At the next opportune moment. It sounded like a solid plan. When I was steady enough to walk, I left the horse at the bottom of the stairs, taking the steps one at a time. My breath tightened in my chest. I passed through the open doors and into the shadows of the house. Inside, it was even more opulent. Black and white checkered marble shone at my feet, flowing to countless doors and a sweeping staircase. A long hall stretched ahead to a giant glass door and the other end of the house. And though then I glimpsed a second garden, greater than the one out front. No sign of a dungeon, no shouts or pleas rising up from hidden chambers below. No, just a low growl from a nearby room, so deep that it rattled the vases, overflowing with fat clusters of hydrangea atop the shattered hall tables, as if in response. An open set of polished wooden doors swung wider to my left, a command to follow. My fingers shook as I rubbed my eyes. I'd known the High Fae had once built themselves palaces and temples around the world, building that my mortal ancestors had destroyed after the war out of spite. But I'd never considered how they might live today, the elegance and wealth they might possess. Never contemplated that the fairies, these feral monsters, might own a state grander than any mortal dwelling. I tensed as I entered the room. A long table, longer than we'd ever possessed at our manor, filled most of the space. It was laden with food and wine, so much food, some of it wafting tendrils of steam that my mouth watered. At least it was familiar and not some strange fairy delicacy. Chicken, bread, peas, fish, asparagus, lamb. Ugh. Could have been a feast at any mortal manor. Another surprise. The beast padded to the oversized chair and at the head of the table. I lingered by the threshold, gazing at the food, all that hot, glorious food that I couldn't eat. That was the first rule we were taught as children, usually in songs or chants. If misfortune forced you to keep company with a fairy, you never drink their wine. You never ate their food. Ever. Unless you wanted to wind up enslaved to them in mind and soul. Unless you wanted to wind up dragged back to Perithian. Well, the second part had already happened, but I might stand a chance at avoiding the first. The beast plopped into the chair. The wood groaned, and a flash of white light turned into a golden-haired man. I stifled a cry and pushed myself against the paneled wall beside the door, feeling for the molding of the threshold, trying to gauge the distance between me and escape. This beast was not man, not a lesser fairy. He was one of the High Fae, one of their ruling nobility, beautiful, lethal, and merciless. He was young, or at least what I could see of his face seemed young. His nose, cheeks, and brows were covered by an exquisite golden mask, embedded with emeralds, shaped like whorls of leaves. Some absurd high-fate fashion, no doubt. It left only his eyes, looking the same as they had been if they had in his beast form. Strong jaw, the mouth for me to see, and mouth for me to see, and the latter tightened to a thin line. You should eat something, he said. Unlike the elegance of his mask, the dark green tunic he wore was rather plain, accented only with a leather baldric across his broad chest. It was more for fighting than style, even though he bore no weapons I could detect. Not just one of the High Fae, but a warrior. But a warrior, too. I didn't want to consider what might require him to wear a warrior's attire and tried not to look too hard at the leather of the baldric gleaming in the sunlight, steaming in through the back of the windows behind him. I hadn't seen a cloudless sky like this in months. He filled a glass of wine for an exquisitely cut crystal decanter and drank deeply, as if he needed it. I inched toward the door, my heart beating so fast I'd vomit. The cool metal of the door hinges bit into my fingers. If I moved fast, I could be out of the house and sprinting for the gate within seconds. He was undoubtedly faster, but chucking some of those pretty pieces of hallway furniture in his path might slow him down. Though his fey ears with their delicate pointy arches would pick up any whisper of movement from me. "Who are you?" I managed to say. His light golden hair was so similar to the color of his beast form's pelt. Those giant claws undoubtedly still lurked just below the surface of his skin. "Sit," he said gruffly, waving a broad hand to encompass the table. "Eat." I ran through the chants in my head again and again. Not worth it. Easing my ravenous hunger was definitely not worth the risk of being enslaved to him in mind and soul. He let out a low growl. "Unless you'd rather faint." "It's not safe for humans," I managed to say. Offense be damned." He huffed a laugh. "More feral than anything. The food is fine for you to eat, human." Oh, he huffed a laugh. More feral than anything. "Melina, welcome. Tyler, welcome." More feral than anything. The food is fine to eat, human. Those strange green eyes pinned me to the spot, as if he could detect every muscle in my body that was priming to bolt. "Leave if you want," he added with a flash of teeth. "I'm not your jailer. The gates are open. You can live anywhere in Perithian, and no doubt be eaten or tormented by a wretched fairy. But while every inch of this place was civilized and clean and beautiful, I had to get out, had to get back. That promise to my mother, cold and vain as she was all I had. I made no move toward the food. "Fine," he said, the word laced with a growl, and began serving himself. I didn't have to face the consequences of refusing him another time as someone strode past me, heading right for the head of the table. "Well," the stranger said, "another High Fae, red-haired and finely dressed in a tunic of muted silver. He too wore a mask. He sketched a bow to a seated male and then crossed his arms. Somehow, he hadn't spotted me where I was still pressed against the wall. Well, what?" My captor cocked his head. the movement more animal than human. Is Andres dead then? A nod from my captor. Savior, whatever he was. I'm sorry, he said quietly. How? The stranger demanded, his knuckles white as he gripped his muscle arms. An ash arrow, said the other. His red-haired companion hissed. The treaty summoned led me to immortal. I gave her safe haven. Oh, his companion hissed. The treaty summoned led me to immortal. I gave her safe haven. A girl, a mortal girl, actually killed Andres? Not a question so much as a venom-coated sting of words. He glanced at the end of the table where my empty chair stood, and the summons found the girl responsible. The golden masked one gave a low, bitter laugh and pointed at me. The treaty's magic brought me right to her doorstep. The treaty's magic brought me right to her doorstep. The stranger whirled with fluid grace. His mask was bronze and fashioned after a fox's features, concealing all but the lower half of his face, along with most of what looked like a wicked, slashing scar from his brow down to his jaw. It didn't hide the eye that was missing, or the carved golden orb that had replaced it. Wow. And moved as though he could use it. It fixed on me. Even from across the room, I could see him remaining russet-eyed widen. He sniffed once, his lips curling a bit to reveal straight white teeth, and then he turned to the other fairy. You're joking, he said quietly. That scrawny thing down there, Andres, with a single ash arrow? Bastard, you absolute bastard. A pity I didn't have the arrow now, so I could shoot him instead. She admitted to it, the golden-haired one said tightly, tracing the rim of the goblet with a finger. A long, lethal claw slid out, scraping against the metal. I fought to keep my breathing steady, especially as he added. She didn't try to deny it. The fox-masked fairy sank onto the edge of the table, the light catching his long, fire-red hair. I could understand his mask, with that brutal scar and that missing eye, but the other high face seemed fine. Perhaps he wore it out of solidarity. Maybe that explained the absurd fashion. Well, the red-haired one seethed. Now we're stuck with that, thanks to your useless mercy. And you've ruined. Now we're stuck with that. Thanks to your useless mercy, and you've ruined. I stepped forward. Only one step. I wasn't sure that I was going to say, but being spoken about that way, I kept my mouth shut. But it wasn't enough. But being spoken that way, I kept my mouth shut, but it was enough. Did you enjoy killing my friend human? The red-haired one said. Did you hesitate, or was the hatred in your heart riding too hard to consider sparing him? It must have been so satisfying for a small mortal thing like you to take him down. The golden one said nothing, but his jaw tightened. As they studied me, I reached for a knife that wasn't there. Anyway, the fox-masked one continued, facing his companion again with a sneer. He would likely laugh if I ever drew a weapon on him. Perhaps there's a way to... Lucien, my captor said quietly, the name echoing with a hint of snarl. Behave. Lucien went rigid, but he hopped off the edge of the table and bowed deeply to me. My apologies, lady. Another joke at my expense. I'm Lucien, courtier and emissary. He gestured to me with a flourish. Your eyes are like stars, and your hair like burnished gold. He cocked his head, waiting for me to give him my name, but telling him anything about me, about my family, and where I came from. Her name is Farah, said one in charge. The beast. He must have learned my name at the cottage. Those striking green eyes met mine again, and then flicked to the door. Alice will take you to your room. You could use a bath and fresh clothes. I couldn't decide whether it was an insult or not. There was a firm hand on my elbow, and I flinched. A rotund brown-haired woman in a simple brass bird mask tugged on my arm and inclined her head toward the open door behind us. Her white apron was crisp above her homespun brown dress. A servant. The mask had to be some sort of trend. Then, if they cared so much about their clothes, about even their servants wore, maybe they were shallow and vain enough for me to deceive. Interesting. Wendy, VSG, smashing that follow button. Welcome to the Smashers. Boom, baby. Ow, ow. Let's go. Shallow and vain enough for me to deceive. Despite their master warrior's clothes, still they were high fae. I would have to be clever and quiet and bide my time until I could escape. So I let Alice lead me away. Room, not cell. A small relief then. I'd barely made it a few steps before Lucian growled. That's the hand of Cauldron thought to deal us. She brought down Andrus. We never should have sent him out there. None of them should have been out there. It was a fool's mission. His growl was more bitter than threatening. Could he shapeshift as well? Maybe we should just take a stand. Maybe it's time to say enough. Dump the girl somewhere. Kill her. I don't care. She's nothing but a burden. She'd sooner put a knife in your back and talk to you, or any of us. She'd sooner put a knife to your back than talk to you, or any of us. I kept my breathing calm, my spine locking, and no, the other bit out. Not until we know for certain that there is no other way we will make a move. And as for the girl, she says, unharmed, end of discussion. Her life is that hovel was hell enough. Her life in that hovel was hell enough. My cheeks heated, even while I loosened a tight breath, and I avoid looking at Alice as I felt her eyes slide to me. A hovel. I suppose that's our cottage. That's what our college was when compared to this place. One minute. Yo, what's up? Let me call you back on that. All right. Ciao. All right. Okay, a hovel. I suppose that's what our cottage was when compared to this place. Then you've got your work cut out for you, old son, Lucian said. I'm sure her life will be a fine replacement for Andros. Maybe she can even train with the others on the border. A snarl of irritation resonated through the air. The shining, spotless halls shallowed me up before I could even hear more. Alice led me through the halls of gold and silver until we came to a lavish bedroom on the second level. I'll admit, I didn't fight that hard when Alice and two other servants, also masked, bathed me, cut my hair, and then plucked me until I felt like a chicken being prepared for dinner. For all I knew, I might very well may be their next meal. It was only the high-faced promise to live out my days in Perithian instead of dying that kept me from being sick at the thought. While these fairies also looked human, save their ears. While these fairies also looked human, save for their ears, I'd never learned what the High Fae called their servants, but I didn't dare to ask, or to speak to them at all. Not when having their hands to me. Having them so close was enough to make me focus solely on not trembling. Still, I took one look at the velvet turquoise dress Alice had placed on the bed and wrapped my white dress gown tightly around me, sinking into a chair and pleading for my old clothes to be returned. Alice refused, and when I begged again, trying my best to sound pathetic and sad and pitiful, she stormed out. I hadn't worn a dress in years. I wasn't about to start now. Not when escape was my main priority. I wouldn't be able to move freely in a gown, bundled in my robe. I sat for a minute after minute, the chattering of small birds in the garden beyond the windows of the only sounds. No screaming, no clashing weapons, no hint of any slaughter or torture. The bedroom was larger than our entire cottage. Its walls were pale green, delicately sketched with patterns of gold, and the moldings were golden as well. I might have thought it tacky, had the inventory furniture and rugs not compelled it so well. The gigantic bed was of a similar color scheme, and the curtains that hung from the towering headboard drifted in a faint breeze from the open windows. My dressing gown was of the finest silk, edged with lace, simple and exquisite. And exquisite enough that I ran my fingers along the lapels. The few stories I've heard had been wrong, or 500 years of separation had muddled them. Yes, I was still prey, still born and weak and useless compared to them, but this place was peaceful, calm, unless this was an illusion too, and the loophole in the treaty was a lie, a trick to set me ease before they destroy me. The High Fae liked to play with their food. The door creaked and Alice returned, a bundle of clothing in her hands. She lifted a sodded grayish shirt. "You want to wear this?" I gasped. I gasped at the holes in the sides and sleeves. It fell apart at the moment of the laundress's put in the water. She held up a few scrapes of brown. "Here's what's left of your pants." I clamped down on the curse building in my chest. She might be a servant, but she could easily kill me too. "Will you wear the dress now?" she demanded. I knew I should get dressed, should get up, should agree, but I slumped farther into my seat. Alice stared me down for a moment before leaving again. She returned with trousers and a tunic that fit me well, both of them rich and with color, a bit fancy, but I didn't complain when I donned the white shirt, nor when I buttoned the dark blue tunic and ran my hands over the scratchy golden thread embroidered on the lapels. It had a cost of fortune in itself, and it tugged at the useless part of my mind that admired lovely and strange and colorful things. I was too young to remember much before my father's downfall. He tolerated me enough to allow me to loiter around his offices, and sometimes he explained various goods and their worth, the detail of which I'd long since forgotten. My time in his offices, full of scents of exotic spices and the music of foreign tongues, made up a majority of my happy memories. I didn't need to know the worth of everything in this room to understand that the emerald curtains alone, silk with gold velvet, could have fed us for a lifetime. A chill scuttled down my spine. It had been days since I'd left. The venison would be running low already. Alice herded me into a low back chair before the darkened fireplace, and I didn't fight back as she ran a comb through my hair and began to braid it. "You're hardly more than skin and bones," she said, her fingers luxurious against my skull. Winter does not, does that. Winter does that to poor mortals? Oh, winter does that to poor mortals, I said, fighting to keep the sharpness from my tone. She huffed a laugh. "If you're wise, you'll keep your mouth shut and open your ears. It'll do more good here than a loose tongue. And keep your wits about you. Even your senses will try to betray you here." I tried not to cringe at a warning. Alice went on. "Some folk are bound to be upset about Andrus. Yet if you ask me, Andrus was a good sentinel, but he knew he would face when he crossed that wall. Knew he'd likely find trouble. And others understand the terms of the treaty too, even if they might resent your presence here, thanks to the mercy of our master. So keep your head down, and none of them will bother you. Though, Lucian, he could do with someone snapping at him, if you have the courage for it." I didn't. And when I went to ask more about whom I should try to avoid, she already finished with my hair and opened the door to the hall. Chapter 7. Let's get some water. Yo, real quick, guys. We're on Chapter 7. We are reading A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This was recommended to me, and it's been absolutely amazing so far. This is my first type of read like this, so pretty good. In all the aspects, it's just absolutely the way that she speaks, the way that she's able to allow you to create a story within your head. Every time I'm reading it, I'm able to see the story, and it's really, really cool. I'm mad impressed. So let's grab some water, and we will continue to read. I'm super excited. We got about 20 more minutes of the read out. Where is my water? It's gonna be a good day. It's gonna be a mighty, mighty good day. All right. Here we go. I had to get some Celtic salt. Some water. We'll wait for that to be gone. All right. You guys, so every Thursday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be reading books. We're starting with The Court of Thorns and Roses. This currently has, looks like 46 chapters. We're currently on 7. So, super excited. As time goes by, we'll get faster at getting, well, not faster, but better at reading these types of books. Chapter 7. The golden hair High Fae and Lucian were lounging at the table when Alice returned me to the dining room. They no longer had plates before them, but still sipped from golden goblets, real gold, not paint or foil. Our mismatched cutlery flashed through my mind as I paused in the middle of the room. Such wealth, such staggering wealth. When we had nothing, a half-wild beast, Nessa had called me. Oh, a half-wild beast, Nessa had called me. But compared to him, compared to this place, compared to the elegant, easy way they had their goblets, and the way the golden-haired one had called me human, we were all half-wild beasts to the High Fae, even if they were the ones who could don fur and claws. Food still remained on the table, the array of spices lingering in the air, beckoning. I was starving, my head unnervingly light. The golden hair High Fae's mask gleamed with the light rays of the afternoon sunshine. Before you ask again, the food is safe for you to eat. He pointed to the chair at the other end of the table, no sign of his claws. When I didn't move, he cited sharply. What do you want then? I said nothing. To eat, flee, save my family. Lucian drawled from his seat along the length of the table. I told you so, Tamlin. He flicked a glance toward his friend. Your skills with females have definitely become rusty in recent decades, Tamlin. He growled at Lucian, shifting in his seat. I tried not to stiffen as the other bit of information Lucian had give away. Decades. Tamlin didn't look much older than me, but his kind was immortal. He could have been hundreds of years old, thousands. My mouth dried up as I carefully studied their strange masked face, unearthly, primal, and imperious. Like immovable gods or feral countiers. Well, Lucian said, his remaining rusted eye fixed on me, you don't look half as bad now. A relief, I suppose, since you're to live with us. Though the tunic isn't as pretty as the dress. Wolves ready to pounce. That's what they were, just like their friend. I was all too aware of my diction, of the very breath I took as I said, I'd prefer not to wear that dress. And why not, Lucian crooned. It was Tamlin who answered for me. Because killing us is easier than in pants. Is easier in pants. Oh, snap. I kept my face blank, willed my heart to calm as I said, now that I'm here, what do you want? What do you plan to do with me? Lucian snorted, but Tamlin said with a snarl of annoyance, just sit down. An empty seat had pulled out at the end of the table. So many foods, piping hot and wafting those enticing spices. The servants had probably brought out new food while I washed. So much wasted. I clenched my hands into fists. We are not going to bite. Lucian's white teeth gleamed in a way that suggested otherwise. I avoided his gaze, avoided that strange, animated metal eye that focused on me as I inched to my seat and sat down. Tamlin rose, stalking around the table, closer and closer, each movement smooth and lethal. A predator blooded with power. It was an effort to keep still, especially as he picked up a dish, brought it over to me, and piled some meat and sauce on my plate. I said quietly, I can serve myself. Anything to keep him well away from me. Tamlin paused, so close that one swipe of those claws lurking under his skin could rip my throat out. That's that was why a leather baldric bore no weapons. Why use them when you were a weapon yourself? It's an honor for a human to be served by a high fae, he said roughly. I swallowed hard. He continued piling various foods on my plate, stopping only when it was heaping with meat and sauce and bread, and then filled my glass with pale, sparkling wine. I loosed a breath as he prowled back to his seat, though he could probably hear it. I wanted nothing more than to bury my face in the plate and then eat my way down that table. But I pinned my hands beneath my thighs and stared at the two fairies. They watched me, too closely to be casual. Tamlin straightened up a bit and said, "You look better than before." Was that a compliment? I could have sworn Lucian gave Tamlin an encouraging nod. And your hair is clean. Perhaps it was and your hair is clean. Perhaps it was my raging hunger making. I'm laughing because I just think it's funny how he's talking to her and how he's giving compliments. Perhaps it was my raging hunger making me hallucinate the piss poor attempt at flattery. Still, I leaned back and kept my words calm and quiet, the way I might speak to any other predator. You're a high fae, fairy nobility? Lucian coughed and looked to Tamlin. You can take that question. Second. All right. Lucian coughed and looked at Tamlin. You can take that question. Yes, Tamlin said, frowning, as if searching for anything to say to me. He settled on merely, "We are." Fine. A man fairy of few words. I'd killed his friend, was an unwanted guest, and I wouldn't want to talk to me either. What do you plan to do with me now that I'm here? Tamlin's eyes didn't leave my face. Nothing. Do whatever you want. So I'm here to be your slave? I dare asked. Lucian choked on his wine, but Tamlin didn't smile. I don't keep slaves. I ignored the release of tightness in my chest at that. But what am I to do with my life here? I pressed. Do you? Do you wish me to earn my keep? To work? A stupid question, if he hadn't considered it. But I had to know. Tamlin stiffened. What you do with your life isn't my problem. Lucian pointedly cleared his throat, and Tamlin flashed him a glare. After an exchanged look I couldn't read, Tamlin sighed and said, "Don't you have any interests?" No, not entirely true, but I wasn't about to explain the painting to him. Not when he was apparently having a great deal of trouble just talking to me civilly. Corgi says, "Oi again, mate. What's going on, mate? How you doing, bruv?" Lucian muttered. There we go. That's better. Now I don't gotta hold it up as high. Lucian muttered, so typically human. Tamlin mouth quirked to the side. Do whatever you want with your time, just stay out of trouble. So you truly mean for me to stay here forever? What I meant was, so I'm to stay in this luxury while my family starves to death? I didn't make the rules, Tamlin said tersely. My family is starving, I said. I didn't mind begging, not for this. I'd given my word and held to the word for so long that I was nothing and no one without it. Please let me go. There must be some other loophole out of this treaty's rules, some other way to atone. Atone, Lucian said? Have you even apologized yet? Apparently all attempts to flatter me were dead and gone, so I looked Lucian right in his remaining rusted eye and said, I'm sorry. Lucian leaned back in his chair. How did you kill him? Was it a bloody fight or a cold-blooded murder? My spine stiffened. I shot him with an ash arrow, and then an ordinary arrow through the eye. He didn't put up a fight. After the first shot, he just stared at me. Yet you killed him anyway? Though he made no move to attack you? And then skinned him? Lucian hissed. Enough, Lucian, Tamlin said to his courtier with a snarl. I don't want to hear her details, he turned to me. Ancient and brutal and unyielding. I spoke before he could say anything. My family won't last a month without me. Lucian chuckled. I gritted my teeth. Do you know what it's like to be hungry? I demanded, anger rising to devour my common sense. Do you know what it's like to not know what your next meal will be? Tamlin's jaw tightened. Your family is alive and well cared for. You think so low of fairies that you believe I'd take their only source of income and nourishment and not replace it? Whoa, oh snap. For real? Dang, for real? I straightened. You swear it? Even if fairies couldn't lie, I had to hear it. A low, incredulous laugh. On everything that I am and possess. Why not tell me that when we left the cottage? Would you have believed me? Do you even believe me now? Tamlin's claws embedded in the arms of his chair. Why should I trust a word you're saying? You're all masters of spinning your truths to your own advantage. Some would say it's unwise to insult a fae in his home, Tamlin ground out. Some would say you should be grateful for me finding you before another one of my kind came to claim the debt, for sparing your life and then offering you the chance to live in comfort. I shot to my feet, wisdom be damned, and was about to kick back my chair when invisible hands clapped on my arms and shoved me back into the seat. Do not do whatever it was you were contemplating, Tamlin said. I went still, and the tang of magic seared my nose. I tried to twist in the chair, testing the invisible bonds, but my arms were secure and my back was pressed onto the wood so hard that it ached. I glanced at the knife beside my plate. I should have gone for it first, futile effort or no. I'm going to warn you once, Tamlin said too softly. Only once. Oh, said too softly. I'm going to warn you once. Only once. And then it's on you, human. I don't care if you go live somewhere else in Prithian, but if you cross the wall, if you flee, your family will no longer be cared for. His words were like stone to my head. If I escaped, even if I tried to run, I might very well doom my family. And even if I dare risk it, even if I succeeded in reaching them, where would I take them? I couldn't stow my sisters away on a ship, and once we arrived somewhere else, somewhere safe, we'd have nowhere to live. But for him to hold my family's well-being against me, to throw away their survival if I stepped out of line? I opened my mouth, but a snarl rattled the glass. It's not a fair bargain. If you flee, then you might not be so lucky with whomever comes to retrieve you next. His claws slipped back under his knuckles. The food is not enchanted or drugged, and it will be your own damn fault if you faint. So if you're going to sit at this table and eat, Farah, and Lucian will do his best to be polite. He threw a pointed look in my direction. Lucian shrugged. The invincible bonds loosened, and I winced as I whacked my hands on the underside of the table. The bonds on my legs and middle remained intact. One glance at Tamlin's smolder green eyes told me what I wanted to know, his guest or not. I was going to get up from this table until I'd I wasn't going to get up from this table until I'd eaten something. I'd think about the sudden change in my plans to escape later. For now, I'd eyed the silver fork and carefully picked it up. They still watched me, watched my every move, the flare of my nostrils as I sniffed the food on my plate. No metallic stench of magic. And fairies couldn't lie, so we had to be right about the food then. Stabbing a piece of chicken, I took a bite. It was an effort to keep from grunting. I hadn't had food this good in years. Even the meals we had before our downfall were little more than ashes compared to this. I ate my entire plate in silence, too aware of the high fae observing every bite. But as I reached for a second helping of chocolate torte, the food vanished, just vanished, as if it never existed, not a crumb left behind. Swallowing hard, I set my fork down so they wouldn't see my hands start to shake. One more bite and you'll hurl your guts up, Tamlin said, drinking deeply from his goblet. The bonds holding me loosened. Silent permission to leave. Thank you for the meal, I said. It was all I could think of. Won't you stay for wine, Lucian said with sweet venom from where he lounged in his seat. I braced my hands on my chair to rise. I'm tired. I'd like to sleep. It's been a few decades since I saw one of you, Lucian drawled. But you humans never change, so I don't think I'm wrong when asking you why you find our company to be so unpleasant when surely the men back home aren't much to look at. At the other end of the table, Tamlin gave his emissary a long, warming look. Lucian ignored it. You're high fae, I said tightly. I'd ask why you'd even bother inviting me here at all or dining with me. Fool, I should have been killed 10 times over already, Lucian said. True, but indulge me. You're a human woman, and yet you'd rather eat hot coals than sit here longer than necessary? Ignoring this, he waved a hand at the metal eye and brutal scar on his face. Surely, we're not so miserable to look at. Typical fairy vanity and arrogance. That, at least, the legends had been right about. I tucked the knowledge away. Unless you have someone back home. Unless there's a line of suitors out the door. Get away, mates. Get away. Damn. Okay. Out the door of your hovel that makes us seem like worms in comparison. There was enough dismissal there that I took a little bit of satisfying in saying, I was close with a man back in my village before that treaty ripped me away, before it became clear that you were allowed to do as you please to us, but we can hardly strike back against you. Tamlin and Lucian exchanged glances, but it was Tamlin who said, Are you in love with this man? No, I said casually as I could. It wasn't a lie, but even if I'd felt anything like that for Isaac, my answer still would have been the same. It was bad enough that the High Fae now knew my family existed. I didn't need to add Isaac to the list. Again, that shared look between the two males. And do you love anyone else? Tamlin said through clenched teeth. A laugh burst throughout me, tinged with hysteria. No! I looked between them. Nonsense. These lethal immortal beings really had nothing better to do than this. Is this really what you care to know about me? If I find you more handsome than human men, and if I have a man back home, why bother to ask that at all, when I'll be stuck here for the rest of my life? A hot line of anger sliced through my senses. We wanted to learn more about you. Since you'll be here for a good while, Tamlin said, his lips a thin line. But Lucian's pride tends to get in the way of his manners. He He sighed, as if ready to be done with me, and said, "Go rest. We're both busy most days, so if you need anything, ask the staff. They'll help you." "Why?" I asked. "Why be so generous?" Lucien gave me a look that suggested he had no idea either, given that I murdered their companion, but Tamlin stared at me for a long moment. "I kill too often as it is," Tamlin said finally, shrugged his broad shoulders. "And you're insignificant enough to not ruffle this estate unless you decide to start killing us." All right, so it's 8:02, everybody. It is 8:02. We have been reading for an hour. You guys are all bossy bosses to the max. Let's just recap and just go over a little bit about the greatness. We started on 6. We are, I think, in the middle of 7. What did I say? Yeah, we're in the middle of 7. Ooh, and I just lost my place. We'll get it back. Okay, yeah, right here. No, next page. Boom. All right. Cool. Just Abra says, "My boy, what's up, Just Abra? How you doing, broski? How you doing?" Okay, so we just got done reading chapter 6. We are on chapter 7 of A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This was recommended to us. Absolutely amazing book so far. I think it's really, really cool to be able to see some of the similarities from Beauty and the Beast. And I could see it in the beginning, and I kind of feel this now, and I really like that type of storyline, and I think it's really cool. And for Tamlin to kind of be like, "Yo, you," I thought it was funny. He's like, "Yo, you love anybody else?" And you could tell it was kind of like he like, these are things that he wants to know. Like, he ultimately, you can tell he's ultimately gonna have feelings for this chick. So I think it's really cool. Then you have Lucien. Lucien's a character and a half. Ryan, welcome. So Lucien is a character and a half. Obviously, he has that scar from the eyebrow to the jaw, and then the glass eye. I think that's a pretty cool look for either a book or for a. I just read book right there. Book talk, yes, book talk, Ryan. So I think it's a pretty cool look for like either an anti-hero or a potential villain. He doesn't seem like he's that bad of a crazy, like, if he were to be a villain, because he would have probably done more at this point. Ryan says, "I wish I could have heard you read." Are you talking about Tamlin? Yes, I'm talking about Tamlin. We just got done reading the first, or from chapter 6, and now we're in chapter 7. So yes, I wish I could hear. Yo, we thank you. I was just thinking, okay, because I had to make a phone call, but I technically, yeah, okay, hang on. Come talk to me when you get to chapter 54 of Mist and Fury. Laugh out loud. Oh, snap. 54, Fireheart. What's going on there? What is going on there? Everybody, if you guys don't know, we are live on all the platforms. So if you guys hear me talking to multiple individuals, we are live on multiple platforms. We're live on TikTok, Kick, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all the greatness. So if you guys are on any of those and you want to go over to other channels, I believe TikTok looks a little bit different than all the other channels. So pretty freaking cool. I've read all of her books. She's an amazing author. Spoilers, so I won't spoil it. Oh snap. I gotta be careful. Ryan says, "I'm kidding, but I'm reading the third Harry Potter." Yo, Harry Potters are great books. I love Harry Potters. Harry Potters were the first books I ever started reading besides like kids' books. Seriously, the best. Okay. So Tamlin, I can definitely vibe with Tamlin's character. I see myself more like a Tamlin character. I don't know what he's like in the future. I don't know what he's like in the past, but I know right now I like it. Okay? So I think I could that's how I see myself. You're not a Tamlin. Okay, so I don't know. I'm just seeing like right now. I love that you say that. You're like, you're not. This could be the one, but Tamlin, so we clearly know that there's some stuff behind Tamlin that we don't know about yet. Okay? She says it's hard for me not to spoil him. Yep, so we gotta there's somebody else out. There's another character. So Tamlin, pretty cool so far. He saved her life as in regards to like he could have killed her. He chose to go the other route where you can stay in Perithian. They finally get to Perithian. She sees this place. She notices that she doesn't have her knife on her anymore. She's in this really, really elegant, nice, high-end living area that's way, way, way more spacious than her cottage. And for her to go to see this, as they said, as Tamlin and Lucian ended up stating, is Tamlin ended up stating that she's already been through enough, that where she came from is already enough. So, and she's already kind of seeing that too. She's like, yo, you guys are living good over here, and my family's over here, like, not. I got to get back to them. So, in her head, she's heard all these things about Perithian and about these fairies, and one thing that she keeps repeating over and over is they can't lie. So are we going to find out is that the truth? Can they lie? Can they, or is that just another thing that she's heard? Because as she asked him, yo, is my family okay? Like you really, you're taking care of them right now? Like, okay, I'm going to have to sit back and rethink about how I'm going to do this because I want my family to be taken care of. Fletcher, welcome. Yes, Lucian. Okay, there we go. So where was I? Okay, so her family is not being taken care of. So can they lie? Is that the kind of, that's the thing that I'm hearing repeatedly is, oh, they tell the truth. Oh, they tell the truth. Oh, they tell the truth. And then when she asks, how's my family? They're doing good. You said that you're going to take care of them. Is this the truth? And he chuckles and he laughs a little bit and was like, who do you think I am? So it's like, okay, is he just saying like a defining like, yo, I would never do something like that. Like, I can't believe you would think like that. Or is it like, hey, I'm just going to tell her whatever it is so she doesn't run away. So that's where we're at. She put her foot down. She put boundaries. She's being her character. Her character development is absolutely amazing thus far. For her to not to be like, yo, here's a dress. I don't like this. I'm not wearing this. And for her to be like, yo, this chick could basically kill me too, and still stick up for herself and be like, yo, hey, I don't like this. I don't want to wear it. And then they come back with some new clothes and she's like, okay, this is cool. I'm down with that. So because she's holding her boundaries, I think she's giving herself a lot more opportunity. It's very risky, but she's giving herself a lot more opportunity. Fireheart says, wait till you meet my favorite, T. Spiller. To read this series for the first time again. So T. Spiller. Okay, your favorite character is T. Spiller. I'm going to be on the lookout for that. Fireheart says, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them without spoilers. Oh, snap. Oh. Everybody who's telling me is like, yo, you need all the books. Don't just go out and get the one. You need all the books. So that's my mission this next week, is get all the books. It has been absolutely amazing, guys. We're going to take probably a 10-minute break, most likely a 10-minute break, and go from reading to maybe, should I have some time to myself? Yeah, I should have time to myself. I got it. Important factor, y'all. Important factor. I'm in the point in my life where I am now aware that I'm always trying to fill my time with never just spending my time with myself. And I've been getting better at loving being, what's that word? Solitude? No. Solidify? No. Epic welcome? I said it in this. I literally said it in this because it stood out. Solitude? Something. Alright, anyways. I'm going to spend the rest of my night, which is from 8 to 9. I have till 9. I go to sleep at 9. So I'm going to spend the rest of the 45 minutes to wind down, do some meditation, do some breathing exercises, and think about what I would like to project for tomorrow. What I would like as an outcome for tomorrow. What I would like to see. What I would like to focus on. Goals. All that good stuff. So, everybody, keep being bossy bosses. I love you all. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Go do something for yourself. As you see me going through this journey, this part of my journey, if some of you guys may not need to, but if some of you haven't and that's been on your mind, is doing something for yourself, go out and do something for yourself now before the end of the night.